arguing that Jesus was a shaman
Yeah.
based on the
Okay.
Greek
We can get into that
in the
too.
Gospel of Mark. So the Gospel of Mark is unique because it's one of the oldest Gospels that we know of. But then it's the only Gospel to also preserve Aramaic words, which I
Oh,
argue were with words of power, because the only time the Aramaic words were displayed, which are in about every Bible, it's not like they hide it, but it's always when he's performing a miracle. So I was
oh.
arguing based on the Greek and choosing a little Greek word. I mean, it wasn't the strongest thesis paper because my Greek wasn't the strongest, but it was a way that a professor, I showed him this angle and he thought it was very neat.
But that's what college is supposed to be about. You're supposed to go and invent and go after new ideas. Don't reprove the same idea. Like, we're supposed to be reinventing and doing new things. Like, that's when I heard that. I'm like, that's badass.
Right. So that's exactly what I tried to do, was argue that there was already this very controversial scholar that wrote about Jesus being a magician. And it turns out he did this to almost, he had a lot of very interesting aspects to perpetuate his argument, but he was also just trying to put a thumb in the establishment's face.
Yeah.
And he was a very controversial guy in general.
This isn't Allegro, right? Allegro was the Sacred Cross. And for you,
On his name, but the book's called Jesus the Magician.
Okay.
And
is it worth reading?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. The guy, he was an atheist. He was homosexual in the 60s and 70s, and really just wanted to try to take down Jesus as the historical, divine, godlike figure, and try to just make him as this regular magician guy around the Mediterranean. And he had a lot of really great points. This is where I found the Aramaic words of power, and this is where I started to try to look for Greek words that would suggest magical abilities and stuff like that. And then so I took his work, and then I argued that he's not a magician because he's never paid for anything, but then he's actually a shaman.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like Jesus was doing love spells, but he was healing people, and that's the main focus of a shaman. And so my whole thing was that Jesus, was trying to almost create a historical understanding of him as a shamanic figure. Now, if in terms of do I believe in historical Jesus, that's really up in the air, because there's not a whole lot of evidence to suggest either way, one way or the other. Like there's enough of a tidal wave in the 30, 50 years after his life, something happened.
Something went down.
Yes, but the documentation of him as a historical figure is just really scarce. So
it's super weird. And I was a history major, and I loved history as a kid, and I did that. I was like, okay, where's he at over here? I don't see him here. I don't see him here. So I don't know. I'm at the point now with Jesus where I'm focusing on the other things besides the physical. Like, it does that to me, it doesn't matter right now. It's more about it's an acclamation of all these different characteristics of people that are combined into one person, and you're trying to embody it. And that's the way I see Christianity now.
Absolutely. Me too. I mean, I've been telling people that in response, because within the last, I would say, a couple months, I've actively said that I'm Christian, which has caused a lot of people who know me before, like, what? You're Christian? Why are you Christian? What happened? And then I explain, well, no. It's not that I'm like irrational or anything. It's that just push away any type of interpretation, and then hear my case that the archetypes and the symbolism and the myths embedded with Christianity and even the non-canonical scriptures are true. This was one of the revelation. The reason I became "quote unquote" a Christian is because on LSD here in Berkeley, I had this epiphany that the Logos is absolutely real. Like, the Logos is absolutely real.